Marcus Lee stepped into the quiet hum of the private jet with a sense of purpose settled in his chest. He straightened the lapels of his navy blue suit and lifted his carry-on bag, careful not to jostle the laptop inside. The cabin smelled faintly, of leather and faint perfume that lingered from the last occupant. He settled into the plush first-class seat by the window, sinking into the soft cushion with a small sigh. Mind raced with numbers, dates, and voices from weeks of back and forth. Negotiations. This was the moment he had worked toward for months. The final stretch of a deal worth $1.5 billion. As the jet taxied toward the runway, Marcus opened his laptop and pulled up the latest spreadsheets. Rows of figures glowed. On the screen, columns of percentages and projections that represented livelihoods, investments, and the reputation of his firm, Apex Global. He tapped his fingertip against the trackpad, scrolling through line items and cost analyses. Every number mattered. One misplaced decimal could unravel months of careful planning and delicate conversations. He felt a familiar tingle of excitement mixed with anxiety. He rehearsed his opening line for the closing meeting, a confident tone, clear facts, and genuine warmth for the clients. Around him, in the cabin's quiet luxury, other senior leaders chatted softly. An older woman in a tailored charcoal suit reviewed a printed contract by the sink, her lips moving as she rehearsed a speech. Two men in bespoke attire sampled champagne from slender flutes. Their laughter was muted like distant music. Marcus recognized them as part of the negotiating team that would join him in Tokyo. They were all part of this high-stakes mission together. Yet to him, their calm conversation felt like a fragile shell hiding fierce competition and hidden agendas. The engines whined as the plane lifted into the sky. Marcus watched the ground fall away, replaced by clouds that stretched like white oceans. He leaned back and closed his eyes for just a moment, letting the hum of the engine steady his heartbeat. He thought of the client's CEO, a cautious but shrewd woman who held the key to agreement. Over the past 3 months, Marcus had built a bond of trust with her through video calls at odd hours and in-person dinners under dim lights. He recalled the rushing glow of office lights at midnight, when they hashed out sensitive details by phone. He trusted her, and she trusted him to deliver fairness and value. A soft ping from his phone startled him. Marcus opened the encrypted message. It was from his own boss back at headquarters. 3 simple words. "We need to talk." No explanation. No polite greeting. Just a reminder that even at 35 and 2 promotions in under 5 years, Marcus was still under scrutiny. He swallowed hard and closed the message without replying. Told himself it was routine. Perhaps an update on a small detail, or a logistics change. But the tone felt cold. He pressed his forehead against the headrest, a rush of heat pulsing. Through his cheeks, he forced a slow breath in, then out, focusing on each number in his spreadsheet, till the tension eased, as the flight attendant moved down the aisle, offering snacks and drinks. Marcus asked for green tea. His stomach churned slightly with nerves, and he hoped the hot tea would calm him. The attendant poured steaming water over a paper filter, and Marcus inhaled the gentle aroma of dried leaves. Damned. He wrapped his hands around the warm cup and took a slow sip. The flavor was mild but soothing. It's like a soft promise that things would follow the plan. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a small leather notebook. Inside were pages of handwritten notes, bullet points on key concessions, reminders about cultural customs in Japan, and a short list of conversation openers to build rapport. On one page he had scribbled, "Respect their process. Listen more, then speak." He reviewed those words and nodded to himself. That was his strength. He could listen closely, read between lines, find solutions that left both sides feeling heard. The cabin's overhead lights dimmed as the flight entered a patch of clouds. Outside, sunlight filtered through like thin gold threads. Marcus leaned forward, his elbows resting on the small table. He reviewed the final draft of the term sheet on his screen. He clicked through the markup, comparing revisions. He reminded himself of the people who would benefit if the deal went through. A major investment in renewable energy that could bring electricity to thousands of homes. He pictured the clients, their hopes for growth, their fears of being outmaneuvered. He knew that beyond the billion-dollar figure, real lives and dreams were at stake. Suddenly, his phone buzzed again. Another message from his boss. Urgent. Call me now. The learn urgent felt like an alarm. Marcus's pulse quickened. He tapped the green icon to call back, but hesitated. The connection would go to corporate lines, and HR had access to the call logs. He paused, his finger hovering. He looked toward the front cabin, where the others were still engaged in polite banter. He wondered if they sensed the shift in his mood. Returned to his spreadsheet, convincing himself that the call could wait until he landed. He made a mental plan. As soon as the plane leveled out above the ocean, he would step into the galley, find a quiet spot, and call. He continued to scroll, but his mind kept drifting back to that second message. What could be so urgent that it could not wait until after he had closed the largest deal of his career? He pictured his boss's face, a man known for calm and steady leadership, never one for dramatic flair. The contrast between calm voice and urgent text struck him as odd. Time passed in a blur of cloud cover and spreadsheet review. The flight attendants completed their rounds, and the cabin fell silent again. Marcus stared at the screen, but his eyes felt heavy. He rubbed his temples and ran his hand through his hair. He thought of his wife, back home, juggling parenting duties with his unpredictable travel schedule. He thought of his young daughter, learning to ride a bike, waiting for him to record bedtime stories. He felt a tender ache at the thought of missing milestones, but also a renewed determination. He wanted to build a future for his family. He closed the laptop and stretched his back, glancing at his watch. There were only 2 hours left before they would land in Tokyo. That was barely enough time to call, process whatever news awaited him, and still prepare mentally for the meeting. He pressed the flight attendant call button. When she arrived, he asked if there was a quieter spot where he could make a private call. She nodded and led him to the small business class galley at the rear, where a single seat faced the rear wall. It was cramped, but it felt secluded enough. Marcus settled into the seat and took a deep breath. He opened the call and held the phone to his ear. The dial tone rang once, twice, and then connected. He heard the familiar click of his boss. Picking up. Marcus straightened his posture, ready to hear the change, ready to keep moving forward with the plan. He spoke his greeting in a steady voice. David, hi. I got your message. What's up? As he waited for an answer, Marcus's heart felt heavy.
Hey.
The hum of the engines and distant clink of champagne glasses in the main cabin felt worlds away. He was about to learn if months of work would culminate in triumph, or if some hidden force would sweep it all away before he even reached the ground. The words that came through the phone would change everything. ChatGPT said. The voice on the other end clicked before his boss's calm tone reached him. Marcus, said David, we've had some concerns raised about your conduct with the client. I need you to explain what happened during yesterday's call. Marcus's heart thumped. He remembered the call while he had stayed late to answer every question, walked the CEO through the projections, and made extra time for her personal concerns about cultural differences. He had thought it went perfectly, answered firmly. David, I think the call went smoothly. We covered all key points. She even thanked me for staying late. What concerns? He leaned forward, voice steady, eyes on the small window of cloudlight behind him. There was a brief pause. It's about your tone. Some said you came off as too aggressive. You pushed back on every minor detail. They felt cornered. Marcus frowned. He pressed a finger to his forehead. Aggressive, David. I always listen first. Only challenge when facts need clarity. You know me, read their signals. I show respect. David sighed. Marcus, I know your style, but HQ wants a smoother finish. We can't afford any friction now. I need you to tone it down for the closing meeting. Marcus closed his eyes and rubbed his cheek. He had worked tirelessly to build trust. He lowered his voice. Understood. I will follow your guidance. I'll lead with empathy and let them steer the details.
Ow.
David's next words cut deeper than any criticism. Marcus, I don't think you're the right person to lead this deal anymore. HR will reach you soon. The phone line went dead. The single sentence echoed in the galley like a thunderclap. Marcus stood, gripping the seat's armrests. His Mouth felt dry. He wondered if he had misheard. He checked the phone screen. No. Missed messages. Just the empty call icon. He sank back into the narrow seat, stunned. The hum of the main cabin sounded distant, like a story he used to know. He tried to steady his breathing. This had to be a mistake. He printed out the email threads in his head, David's praise. His own promotions. The months of negotiation. It all lined up, until it didn't. A shadow fell over him. The HR director from headquarters stood in the aisle, her heels clicking on the cabin floor. She held a tablet and spoke quietly to the flight attendant before approaching him. She looked tired and formal. Marcus closed his laptop and stood again, straightening his suit jacket. His hands trembled. "I'm sorry to bother you mid-flight," she said, voice low enough that only Marcus could hear. "Let's talk in private." He nodded and followed her to a small area at the rear, just behind business class. The walls were lined with small cabinets and the faint scent of sanitizer. She tapped her tablet and looked up at him. "We've decided to remove you from this assignment," she said, eyes shadowed. "You'll return on the next flight. Handle the closing without you." The words felt heavy, like stones dropping in his chest. He searched her face for a glimmer of explanation, but saw only the polite mask of protocol. He closed his mouth, fighting to keep his voice calm. "On what grounds?" he asked. His words came out measured but firm. He could not believe this. What was happening? He tried to recall any misstep, any breach of conduct. Nothing fit. She tapped the tablet again. "Your communication style created tension. It's best for all parties if someone else leads the final stage." She handed him a brief, no-tan email from HR, summarizing the decision. It said that the stakeholders had requested a change. It made no mention of performance metrics or sales figures. Marcus felt anger rise inside him, hot and sharp. He pictured the clients in Tokyo, waiting for his arrival, trusting him to guide them. He pictured his team, counting on him to seal the deal. He pictured his wife, who would ask, "How did it go?" He would have to admit, "I was fired mid-flight." He held up the note. "This is humiliating," he said softly. His voice wavered. "I closed every milestone. I answered every call. I adjusted our strategy when they asked." He swallowed. If they had concerns, why not discuss them before firing me on a plane? She watched him with sympathetic eyes, but her tone remained formal. "I understand your frustration. This is out of my hands. The decision is final." She turned and started back toward first class. He watched her heels fade down the aisle, leaving him alone in the tiny galley. He stood for a moment in silence, the jet's engines humming around him. He felt the weight of judgment and confusion pressing in. He thought of his father, who always said, "Control what you can, accept what you cannot." But this felt impossible to accept. He gathered his notebook and laptop, packing them into his briefcase. Each click of the zipper sounded like a verdict. He noticed a few flight attendants had paused in their tasks, watching him with concern. One offered him a bottle of water. He nodded gratefully and sat down again, wrapping his fingers around the cold plastic. Took a slow sip, letting the liquid steady his nerves. He scrolled through his phone contacts, mentors, clients, colleagues. He wanted to call someone, anyone, to make sense of this. But he hesitated. He did not want rumors to spread that he had been fired. His reputation was everything. He pictured the LinkedIn notifications, the whispers in the industry. He refused to let this be the story people remembered. He reopened his laptop and reviewed his slides one more time. He pictured how he might salvage something, perhaps salvage a piece of the presentation, send it ahead, let someone else finish the work in his name. But even that felt hollow. He had always believed that a deal was more than numbers. It was relationships, trust, shared vision. Without him there, the spirit would be lost. Time crawled as the flight resumed its path toward Tokyo. Marcus watched the clouds outside the small window, their shapes shifting like the events of the day. He thought of the client's CEO, the woman who had praised his thoroughness. She'll understand? Would she be upset by the abrupt shift? Would she demand his return or simply adapt? He closed his eyes for a moment and remembered calmer days. The first time he pitched in that polished boardroom in New York, his hands steady, his voice clear. He remembered the rush when the CFO shook his hand and said, "You did well." He remembered his wife's proud smile when he told her about his promotion. Now those memories felt distant, fragile. He opened his eyes, determination flickering within. He reminded himself who he was, someone who had faced tougher challenges, who had rebuilt his work after a major data loss, who had convinced a shut-down factory to invest in new equipment. He had resilience, he had skill, he had integrity. He checked his watch, still far from Tokyo, but the moment was coming soon. He would deplane with his head held high, despite the embarrassment. He would face HR again, demand transparency, and gather facts. He would decide his next move, whether to fight the decision, find a new path, or carve out his own consultancy. But first, he had to step off this plane. He closed the laptop and tucked his notebook away, took another sip of water, set the bottle aside, and rose. He straightened his suit once more, brushed an invisible dust from his sleeve, and walked slowly back toward first class. As he passed the rows of surprised faces, some colleagues avoiding his eyes, others giving polite nods, he felt a mix of shame and resolve. When he reached the front aisle, he paused. The CEO of the client's company sat by the window, reading a magazine. She looked up as he approached. Marcus swallowed hard, steeling himself, would tell her what happened. He would apologize for his sudden absence and assure her that the deal would be handled with care. He would demonstrate that professionalism, not panic, defined him. He took a steady breath and walked past her, heart pounding. He wished he could find the right words, but all he could manage was a nod and a calm. "Thank you for your patience." Then he slipped down the aisle, ready to face the next chapter, whatever it might bring. Marcus stepped off the jet and into the bright light of the Tokyo airport. His heart pounded with heavy thoughts. He felt the smooth pull of the suitcase handle in his hand, but inside he was weighed down by shame and confusion. He moved through. The crowd passed families greeting, loved ones, and business travelers hurrying to their next meeting. He tried to hold his head high, but each passerby seemed to carry a question in their eyes. What happened to him? He waited at baggage claim, watching as his suitcase appeared on the conveyor belt. When he grabbed it, the material felt strangely cold, as if it knew the day had not gone as planned. Outside the terminal, he found a taxi stand. The driver greeted him politely in broken English. Marcus gave his hotel's name, but then paused. He realized he could not face the hotel staff who would expect him at the closing dinner. He thanked the driver and told him to take him to the company's temporary team office instead. The ride was quiet, except for the soft hum of the taxi engine. Marcus watched the city pass by, limning towers, neon signs, busy streets. He felt like an outsider now. He wondered if news of his firing had reached Tokyo yet. Would the clients look at him with doubt? Would the press pick up the story? He tried to squeeze the panic down into a dull ache. He told himself to breathe, to stay calm, to focus on the facts. At the office, he showed his badge to the security guard. The guard hesitated, looking at him curiously. Marcus offered a small, polite smile. Inside, the team room was mostly empty. A few colleagues sat at desks, typing quietly. They glanced up when he entered. Some looked sympathetic. Others stared blankly. No one spoke. He felt their eyes on him as he set down his suitcase and pulled out the note from HR. He placed it on the table. The words removed from assignment felt like a blow. One colleague, Lena, stood up and approached him. She kept her voice low. "Marcus, I'm so sorry. We didn't know this would happen until just now." Her tone was gentle, but her eyes held worry. Others gathered around, offering water or tissues. He thanked them. He tried to speak, but the words stuck in his throat. Simply said, "I need to figure out what comes next." That night, Marcus closed the door of his small hotel room and collapsed on the bed. The soft mattress did nothing to ease his mind. He stared at the ceiling. In his mind, he replayed the mid-flight meeting with HR, David's cold words over the phone, and the CEO's puzzled look when he passed her in the aisle. He felt the sting of betrayal. He had given everything to this company. He had trusted them to support him. Now they had discarded him in midair. He sat up and switched on the bedside lamp, pulled out his phone and opened his email. Hundreds of unread messages lay waiting, some from clients, some from colleagues, and a stream of LinkedIn notifications. He scanned the subjects. Safe. Travels. See you soon. Tokyo closing. His finger hovered over each. He did not know where to begin. He shut the phone and took a deep breath. He rose and walked to the small desk by the window. He opened his laptop and logged into his corporate email. He found the message from HR, the only official notice of his firing. It gave no real reason, only vague references to communication style and stakeholder concerns. He copied the text and pasted it into a blank document. Then he read through every line, looking for clues, for a way to fight, or at least to understand. Tired though he was, Marcus decided he could not stay idle. He opened his contacts list and searched for the CEO of the client company. He recalled her kindness and her commitment to the renewable energy project, composed a short, clear email. Dear Ms. Nakamura, I wanted to let you know that I have been removed from the Tokyo closing by my company. I am deeply sorry for my sudden absence. I value our work together and remain committed to this project's success. Please let me know if there is any way I can support you remotely, or if you would like to discuss further. Sincerely, Marcus. Lee. He hesitated, then clicked send. His finger trembled. He wondered if she would appreciate his candor or see it as weakness. Within minutes, he received an automatic reply acknowledging receipt. That was all for now, but it felt like a small step. He thought of his wife and daughter back home in New York. Late at night their time, they would wonder why he was late calling. He opened his phone and dialed his wife. When she answered, her voice was warm and tired. How was the flight? She asked. He swallowed. I need to tell you something. He took a deep breath and explained briefly. Her response was a pause, then gentle reassurance. We'll get through this, she said. I believe in you. That moment of love gave him strength. He realized that his worth was not defined by one job or one deal. He thought of other times he had overcome setbacks, when a key client had walked away from a smaller deal years ago, when a software system crashed, and he led his team through a scramble to recover data. He had solved problems before. He could do it again. The next morning, he met with the small team that had stayed behind in Tokyo. They gathered in a glass-walled conference room with a view of the city. At the head of the table sat the replacement lead, a polished executive from headquarters. He introduced himself politely, but without warmth. Marcus spoke up. I know you're stepping in for me. I want to make sure you have everything you need. He handed over files, notes, and phone numbers. He pointed out key client preferences, cultural notes, and critical dates. The new lead thanked him, but Marcus sensed distance. He realized that once the company had decided to replace him, they wanted him out of the way. He nodded and left the meeting, feeling like a visitor in his own project. Yet he also felt a spark of defiance. He would not let them erase his contribution. He typed an email to David, his boss, requesting a full explanation of the decision and copies of any client complaints. He copied HR and the legal department, pressed send, and felt a slight relief. It was better to confront them head-on than to stew in silence. Back in his hotel room, Marcus returned to the email from Ms. Nakamura. Her reply came quickly. Mr. Lee, thank you for your message. I was surprised to learn of your removal. Our discussions have been productive and respectful. Hold your expertise in high regard and would be grateful to continue working with you if possible. Please let me know how we can coordinate. Best regards, Keiko Nakamura. His heart lifted. Her words were clear. She wanted him back. This was proof that his firing had nothing to do with his performance with the client. It was politics or misunderstanding at headquarters. He printed her email and stared at it for a long moment. It felt like a lifeline. He spent that night drafting a proposal, a plan for how he could support the closing remotely, how he could bring value even if he was not physically present. He outlined video calls at flexible hours, document reviews, and a commitment to address any client concerns personally He attached the proposal to an email to Ms. Nakamura, expressing his hope to remain part of the project. He paused. He felt tired, but also energized by the possibility of redemption. He realized that despite the humiliation, he still had allies in the respect of the client. He reminded himself that this setback could become an opportunity too. Start his own advisory practice, to take control of his career, to build something aligned with his values of respect and listening. The next morning, he packed his bags to catch the flight back to New York. He walked through the hotel lobby with purpose. He felt a mix of nervousness and hope. He knew that the road ahead would be hard, fighting the company decision, rebuilding his reputation, negotiating with the client and with HR, but he also knew he had already survived worse. At the airport, he checked in and watched the boarding gates. He thought of that first morning on the private jet, nervous and excited. Now he was vulnerable and determined. He boarded the flight and found his seat. As the plane climbed into the sky, he looked out at the clouds, thinking of his wife and daughter. He imagined landing in New York and sharing the good news if his proposal succeeded, or the new plan if it did not. He closed his eyes and let the hum of the engines calm him. He pictured the future he wanted, a firm founded on transparency and respect, where clients and partners knew the person behind the deal. He would learn from this experience and emerge stronger. He allowed himself a small, confident smile. This was not the end of his story. It was the start of something new. He arrived back in New York before dawn, the city lights glinting like a field of stars below. He carried his suitcase through the quiet airport terminal, its wheels clicking against the floor. Sleep tugged at his eyelids, but he pushed it aside. He had urgent calls to make, emails to send, and a reputation to salvage. He hailed a cab and gave the driver his home address. On the ride across the empty streets, he stared out the window at the buildings passing in blur. He felt both weary and determined. In his apartment, the soft glow of the living room lamp welcomed him. He set down his suitcase and closed the door behind him. The house was still. His wife Mia slept in their bedroom, and he could hear the gentle breathing of their daughter Lily in her crib. Marcus paused by the doorway, watching his family rest. He felt a surge of love and remorse. He had missed Lily's first steps, her bedtime stories, and he had left Mia to manage everything. Alone, he slipped off his shoes and walked to the nursery, where baby monitors blinked softly. He smiled as he watched Lily stretch in her sleep. He wished he could rewind time to be there for her more. He poured himself a glass of water from the kitchen, tapped, and sat at the small table by the window. The documents he had prepared for Tokyo peered at him from his laptop screen. His proposal for remote support awaited Ms. Nakamura's reply. He refreshed his inbox. No new messages yet. He opened a blank email to David, asking again for clarification about his firing. He pressed send, then leaned back in his chair, eyes closed. He felt like a boxer after a knockout blow, his world shaken but not beaten. He reviewed his career so far. In college, he had juggled part-time jobs and studies, learning early on that hard work paid off. His first internship at a small firm taught him the value of listening. His mentor there used to say, "The best negotiators understand people." He remembered late nights in the office, drafting memos and making coffee runs, honing his skills. He saw the patterns. He thrived on challenges. He adapted when plans changed, and he earned respect by being reliable. He could bring all that experience to bear now. He opened his phone contacts and started dialing. First was his old mentor Carla, who had guided him when he was a junior analyst. She picked up after 2 rings, her warm voice a balm. He told her, "Carla, I need advice. I've been removed from a major deal. I want to understand what happened and how to move forward." She listened patiently as he explained the mid-flight firing and the client's support. When he finished, she said, "Marcus, it sounds like politics, not performance. Reach out to your network, build allies. Remember, your value isn't defined by one company's decision. You have skills they can't replace." Her words gave him clarity. He made a list of contacts, senior executives who knew his work, clients who had praised his approach, and peers he trusted. He drafted personalized messages, thanking each for past support and asking if they had time to talk. He planned to meet face to face when possible, to show he was handling this setback with composure and to find new opportunities. He glanced at the clock. It was early morning, but he felt energized. He sent his messages and then closed his laptop. He remembered Mia's words during their late-night phone call from Tokyo. "We'll get through this together." He walked through the silent apartment, paused by the family photos on the hallway wall, and placed a hand over each frame. There was the picture from their wedding, the one from Lily's birth, and snapshots of family vacations. They reminded him of why he fought so hard for love, for security, for purpose. He went to the couch and lay down, fully dressed, planning to rest before the first client calls at 9. Sleep came slowly, but when it did, he dreamed of clouded boardrooms clearing to reveal bright windows and open skies. Morning light crept through the blinds. He woke to the sound of his alarm and the faint smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen. Mia had left a note by the coffee maker. "Good luck. Love, we believe in you." He felt a surge of gratitude. He poured a cup, the steam rising in soft spirals, and took a careful sip. The warmth spread through him like reassurance. He opened his laptop and checked his inbox. Ms. Nakamura's reply waited. "Thank you for the proposal. I will review and discuss with my team. Your expertise remains valuable." His heart lifted. He drafted a brief acknowledgement and suggested times for video calls. He clicked send. Next, he saw responses from contacts in New York. One former client asked to meet for lunch to discuss a potential advisory role. A peer invited him to join a small consortium exploring deals in sustainable energy. A friend from a rival firm offered to introduce him to a startup seeking strategic counsel. Slowly, the grid of job leads and possibilities expanded. He felt momentum building. He shut his laptop and dressed for the day in a crisp shirt and tie. He kissed Mia and Lily goodbye as they prepared to leave for daycare. Mia smiled, her confidence. "Steady. You've got this," she said. His resolve hardened. His first meeting was with the former client at a cafe near Wall Street. As they talked over tea, he laid out his vision for a boutique advisory practice, flexible, client-focused, and guided by respect. The client nodded, impressed by his clarity. "We need someone with your approach," she said. "Let's discuss terms." He left the cafe with a signed letter of intent for a 6-month contract. Next, he met with a small team from the consortium. They discussed potential joint ventures and how his skills could add value. He listened, asked questions, and offered insights. By the end of the meeting, they agreed to involve him in their upcoming project on wind farm financing. He walked out feeling the familiar thrill of collaboration. He glanced at his phone. A video call reminder with Ms. Nakamura in 2 hours. He prepared his notes, the status of Tokyo negotiations, key milestones, and his remote support plan. He checked his internet connection and adjusted his webcam. When the call began, Keiko Nakamura's calm face appeared in the window. She greeted him warmly. They spoke for an hour, reviewing the deal's details. He provided insights, answered questions, and reaffirmed his commitment. She thanked him and said, "Marcus, your involvement is crucial. I've spoken with HQ. They will reinstate you as lead. They see now that the firing was a mistake." His breath caught. After all the effort, the support he needed came. He said, "Thank you, Ms. Nakamura. I'm ready to return." They agreed on a timeline for his rejoining the closing meeting, and she promised to advocate for him with the board. After the call, he leaned back in his chair, relief washing over him. Thought of the months invested and the work still ahead. He felt a deep sense of purpose. This setback had taught him that resilience mattered more than smooth sailing. Before the day ended, he drafted an email to David and HR, thanking them for their initial decision but requesting a formal letter of reinstatement and an apology for the mishandling. He highlighted his contributions and the client's support. He added, "I look forward to continuing our work together in a spirit of respect and collaboration." He seed legal, ensuring transparency. He closed his laptop once more. Skyline outside glowed with evening lights. He stepped onto his balcony and breathed in the cool air. He thought of the private jet's hum, the galley confrontation, and the empty office in Tokyo. Those moments felt distant now, like a rough wave behind him. Ahead lay calmer seas, guided by his own hand. That night he joined Mia and Lily in the family room. Lily babbled as he read her a bedtime story. Mia wrapped an arm around his shoulder, proud. Their home felt warm and safe. As Lily drifted to sleep, Marcus kissed her forehead and carried her to her crib. He stood by the nursery window, watching the city lights. He felt gratitude for everyone who had reached out, for his family's love, and for the chance to steer his own path. He whispered to himself, "You belong here." He knew there would be more challenges, but he no longer feared them. He had learned that losing footing could lead to stronger foundations. With that thought, he turned off the lights and headed to bed. Tomorrow, he would finalize his reinstatement, prepare for the Tokyo closing, and continue building his advisory practice. He felt ready for whatever came next, confident that every step, whether up or down, had led him to this moment of renewal. Marcus landed back in Tokyo under a clear sky. He felt a mix of nerves and excitement as he stepped off the plane. In his carry-on, he had his laptop, his notes, and a small photo of his wife and daughter. He smiled at the thought of their support. Through all of this, he knew they were with him in spirit, giving him strength. At the airport, he went straight to the client's temporary office. When he arrived, he saw Keiko Nakamura waiting by the entrance. She greeted him with a warm smile and a firm handshake. "Welcome back, Marcus," she said. His heart lifted. He nodded and thanked her. As they walked through the lobby, he noticed the other team members, who all looked relieved and happy to see him. Their faces gave him a sense of welcome he had missed before. They entered the conference room where the closing meeting was set to begin. The polished table gleamed under soft lights. Marcus unpacked his laptop and laid out his notes, budgets, and final term sheet. He glanced at the rows of chairs lined up for the board members and investors. He felt calm now, ready to lead. Keiko opened the meeting. "Thank you all for joining us today," she said, her voice steady. "We are pleased to have Mr. Marcus Lee back with us for the final steps." She gestured to Marcus. He nodded and began. He spoke in clear, simple English, pausing to let the interpreter translate when needed. He reviewed the final points of the agreement, highlighting benefits for both sides: shared investment in renewable energy, job creation, and a respectful partnership model. As he spoke, he noticed the clients lean forward, nodding in agreement. He felt their trust return. He guided them through the revised timelines, the adjusted pricing models, and the post-closing support plan. He answered each question with patience, listening first, then offering precise answers. He made eye contact with each person in the room, making them feel heard and respected. At one point, a board member asked about a small change in the financing structure. Marcus smiled and said, "I understand your concern. Let me show you how. This adjustment actually lowers risk and maintains our projected returns." He flipped to a slide and explained with simple examples. He saw relief wash over the room. They appreciated his clarity. After 2 hours of careful discussion, Keiko turned to the final page. "If there are no more questions, may I have a motion?" "To approve," a hand raised, followed by several others. The head investor said, "I move to approve the agreement as presented." Another said, "Second." Keiko smiled and announced, "The motion carries unanimously." Applause filled the room. Marcus felt his chest swell with pride and relief. He had done it. They signed the final documents. Marcus placed his signature next to Keiko's. The pen felt smooth in his hand. As everyone shook hands, he felt a wave of gratitude. He looked at Keiko and said softly, "Thank you for believing in me." She nodded and whispered, "Thank you for coming back." After the meeting, they held a small celebration in the office lounge. There were light refreshments, fruit, tea, and small pastries. Marcus raised a glass of green tea and a quiet toast. "To new beginnings," he said, "and to trust." The team echoed his words, and they all clinked their cups. He felt a sense of belonging wash over him. That evening, Marcus walked through the quiet streets of Tokyo. The city lights reflected off wet pavement from an earlier drizzle. He paused by a small park, the lanterns glowing softly among trees. He pulled out his phone and called his wife. When she answered, his voice trembled with emotion. "We did it," he said. "The deal is closed." She cried tears of joy on the other end. I'm so proud of you, she said. I love you.